it's interesting because like we didn't know what this was going to be, right? To really grow an audience and the feedback we get. This is the thing that's amazing to me too. Like I get messages on LinkedIn. We now have PR firms reaching out to us, asking for people to be on. And that's just everyone out there listening and sort of resharing in our little video clips and all that.
This is Revenue Makers, the podcast by 6 Sense, investigating successful revenue strategies that pushed companies ahead. Hey, Adam.
Yeah.
It's that time of year.
The most wonderful time of the year?
It is the most wonderful time of the year, except that sunlight is rare. And, sunset happens like 4:30 where I am. But it's also the time of year where my kids fight about the Spotify Wrapped results because
Really?
it goes from one extreme of Taylor Swift all day, every day to Kendrick Lamar on the other end. And because it's so different, they can't share the Spotify Wrapped with their friends because they're so embarrassed.
So there's like social pressure around Spotify.
It's a
Wrapped.
problem.
Yeah, see, my kids are a little younger. My 10-year-old has been like, is Spotify better than Apple Music? Because we're an Apple Music house. And I'm like, I don't know. I just use it because Apple takes my money faster than Spotify and it's all like integrated. So, and I think Apple ripped off Spotify Wrapped and they call it like Apple Year in Review or something like that. But we are beating around something very monumental.
In our minds, let's be honest, nobody cares.
No, everyone cares. Everybody cares. This is the 50th 50 episode of this podcast. 50. Doesn't that blow your mind?
Yes, because it means I have 50 outfits.
And it means I have 5 because if you go back, I've probably worn this at least 10 times. And I tried.
Okay, so I feel like, Adam, this warrants a Spotify Wrapped of Revenue Makers.
It absolutely does. I was told by many experts that most podcasts don't make it past episode 7.
Okay, so we beat that.
We beat that. We beat Friends spinoff Joey, which I think only did like 24 episodes, maybe even 1 season.
Okay, that's a bigger accomplishment. I like that. What else?
Actually, that was the only television example I had because I was going to get really clever on that. But we've beaten a lot. I think we've done quite a bit. So my plan, and I think I shared this with you, was I was going to take every transcript from every one of our episodes, and I was going to pull the power of large language models and AI and throw them all and say, okay, talk to me about these podcasts. What are the key themes? What should we really say? What did we learn across 50 episodes or 49? Because this is actually the 50th episode. So 49 episodes. It couldn't do it. I tried ChatGPT. I tried Claude. I tried some other products I won't name. And just for one bit of context, I took every transcript, put it in one document. It is 698 pages, 250,000 words.
We talk way too much.
It's like, we need to shut up. I put it in one instance, it could only tell me about one episode.
Okay.
No matter what I asked. I was like, okay. In another instance, it was just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if what the technical, it just was like, cannot process. So I was very disappointed about this because it was going to be like the episode that AI built. So it would give us some conversation points. It didn't work. But now I have a document of 698 pages and 250,000 words, which is all, if anyone reads it, they'll just be an expert in
everything. Yes, because what that tells me is we talk a lot, but I guess it's very chaotic. And the podcast analytics have been pretty great. So maybe people dig chaotic.
And then to your point about podcast analytics, I basically have 7 versions of the truth, but pulling it together from Apple, Spotify, YouTube, because we get people come and actually look at us on YouTube.
Well, we do the outfits for a reason.
And they're looking at your outfits and they're wondering, can he wear that again? But here's what we've got. 5 episodes of what I'll say is our top 5 from a listener perspective.
Let's reveal the top 5. And maybe we just talk through them and hit on the high points. So what was number 5?
Actually, this is a very recent episode. And these numbers are very, very close in terms of numbers. So we had an episode about cold calling. Like, I don't know, this was just a couple weeks ago with Nick from 30 Minutes to President's Club. And that one, interestingly enough, had our biggest listener views, whatever you want to call on YouTube, by like a factor of 5. And it was a great episode. And we lost our minds in that episode as well, because we were recording that from Breakthrough, our customer conference, like on the trade show floor, but really good.
Really good. And I think it was interesting because obviously Sixth Sense wrote a book about no form, no spam, no cold calls. And so when we say cold calling sucks, as Nick does, and in the book, the whole point of it is to not cold call, but to put some context into the why, to understand the signals as to why you should be reaching out to somebody and why you might have something of value to share with them. And so it was a nice sort of coming together of both books, because we're all trying to say the same things. Bring value to the prospect, share the value quickly in your opener of your cold call, because people's time is really valuable.
Absolutely. And we literally asked, how do you go about cold calling? Because, again, if you read the book, we talk about signals and all that. He literally goes into it. And it's a really good way to, hey, this is a cold call, but it's well-researched, which was my favorite sort of line across all of their content. They use that a lot. I think that just works really well because it's pretty straight up. So that one was really interesting. And I think that's an audience of, we're trying to talk to salespeople, right? And we have some salespeople listen to the podcast, but marketers have to be in tune with how sales is going on, prospecting on the phone. And there was a lot in that one. It was literally 3 or 4 weeks ago. So it was worth checking out for sure.
All right. What else?
Then here's the other major reveal I think that I know we realized throughout the last 50 episodes, is that some of the most performing episodes, and this is wild to me, is just you and I throwing things against the wall.
I can't believe that. But yes, the numbers don't lie.
The number 4 was our attribution episode, which I believe I said at the beginning, I thought it was going to be you and I having a throwdown, which after 49 episodes, we still haven't had about any topic, which
Give
is
it time.
Generally good, but also somewhat disappointing, because at some point we want to argue about something.
Mm-hmm. So here's why I think some of the Adam and Saima episodes work, is because we're practitioners. We are doing this every day, and we're talking about topics and problems that we face every day. And attribution is a perfect example, right? There is no perfect attribution out there. And so in the episode, we talk a lot about pick one version, measure it consistently so that you can compare over time how things are performing. Tools out there are helpful, but again, there is no silver bullet. And so the recommendation beyond just picking one and sticking with it is do a post analysis, right? Every quarter, take your closed won deals and look at all the touch points along that journey, not the last touch, not the first touch, not the touch that converted the form fill, but what happened along that journey. I mean, Carrie Cunningham research showed that the average B2B sales cycle is over 11 months right now, right? And the average buying team size is 11 point something as well. And so you have to be looking at that full picture, whether it was engagement with display, whether it was clicking through a nurture email by your champion, whether it was attending a webinar or attending a physical event, like all of those touch points along the way that marketing is driving, also the sales touch points.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was our one thing, which I think I repeated several times obnoxiously throughout that episode, was about marketing in general and attribution and influence of marketing. And what did we say that was?
Marketing influences 100%
Yep.
of your close won deals.
Yeah, well, if you're doing it right. And so, which, again, there's so many things going on that the salesperson's on, they're making a call, but like marketing, there's a message out there, there's content. I mean, again, it's to your point, there's no perfect model. And of course, there's tools out there to let you track that journey. There's also tools out there to do W-shaped, X-shaped, alpha, omega shit, which I don't understand or think like you want to attribute 14 cents on the dollar to this particular, like that just gets a little bit out of control. But understanding the journey, like tech can help you do that for sure.
And just repeat those things and continue to put budget there and maybe kill the things that aren't helping move things along. It's really basic, but you have to be looking at the data. Just understand that there is no single source of truth for the 14 cents on the dollar that webinar generated.
Yes, and people can quote 14 cents on the dollar. That's going to be my new thing now when I talk in any of our meetings. And I say like, well, this was 13 cents on the dollar. Anyway.
All right. Attribution episode's a good one. And we'll link all of these throughout.
Yes.
In the show notes.
Now, the next one, I was surprised that it was in our top 5, though, just because it was a little bit, somewhat of a niche topic. And that episode was the Revenue Operations Manual, which was actually an interview. It was our first time having 2 guests at the same time. It was very like, was it going to be like Crossfire? I don't know. But it was, so Sean Lame and Laura Dent wrote this book called The Revenue Operations Manual. And it's a great sort of like deep dive into the profession and into the building the team and all that. And it's one of our top rated episodes. And again, it's more recent too. It's just maybe a month or 2 ago.
So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I know you said you're surprised. I'm not surprised because marketing has become very technical. And
true.
The rev ops function or even the marketing ops function, you need that to be super strong and super integrated with everything else that is running in the organization. And so to me, with a strong MOPS person is worth their weight in gold. And having the process, having the structure and consistency and naming conventions and, just again, having a single source of truth, that is critical to any marketer today needing to show the value or the impact of their efforts, but also just to make sure that the entire revenue org is marching to the same beat. Yeah. So again, I feel like it's timely, it's relevant, and it's going to be one of those things that every single go-to-market leader needs to make sure is done well.
And the interesting thing is like marketing ops as a function has been around for a long time. Sales operations as a function has been around, but revenue operations in and of itself is pretty new of the 3. And like, depending upon where the company you're at, all 3 are in one. I found that pretty interesting as well. And like, there's so much, and we talked about that, there's so much data. And we talk about marketing having so much data. Sales has so much data. There's so much, like, it's overload. And right now, because here we are, so recording this episode in near the end of the year, everyone's is in planning mode for next year. And so RevOps is they've revving it into overdrive. Okay, that was.
Yeah, that was.
We know the dad jokes. That was actually one of. When you stop yourself, it's bad.
It's okay. All right. So revenue operations.
Yes.
That was a good episode.
Now, the next episode, which I believe of all of the Saima and Adam episodes, was probably the best Saima and Adam episode. And actually, just as a little bit departure, we talk about people love we did an episode on account-based digital, yes, which was really you asking me questions and me rambling for 25 minutes. And the listen numbers are good, but we also, for anyone out there in the podcast who has a podcast, you want to know about consumption. You want to know people are listening whatever percentage through your episode. We have really good consumption, right? People are listening to our shows like nearly all the way through. That episode went boom on consumption because people are like, what the hell is this guy talking about? It was literally like 20 to 30% less than.
No, I don't believe that because it is number 2 on the list.
But that's just pure listening. You talk about consumption. No, it's not on the list. The digital episode, this is the number 2 on the list. I was just pointing out that all Saima and Adam episodes were not created equal, but that was really more, I take responsibility. You're like, you just jumped on that. So, but the next episode is, I thought it was great. I'm obviously unbiased, but in my AI podcast project, I was expecting it to be like, ICP is in every episode, but it kind of is. So this episode was our definitive guide to ICP, at least in our opinion.
Well, again, there's a lot of hate on LinkedIn right now, by the way, for like, everything is dead, whether it's outbound, MQLs, but also ABM is apparently dead, right? And I don't know, but regardless of what you are doing in your organization, you have got to understand who your target market is, right?
Yeah.
What your ideal customer looks like. And so in that episode, and I think the reason it resonated is we do go pretty deep on specifically how we actually create our ICP, how we keep it fresh and relevant, and then how we use that ICP in every single campaign to ensure that we're not wasting a single dollar on accounts that aren't the right fit or on competitors, or, how we're able to use it to parse out our enterprise ICP versus our commercial or strategic ICP. And so I think it's just something that every marketer should be using. And by the way, the reason we did that episode is because we found that it almost became like a game because whichever guest we had on was talking about ICP. And so we kind of knew we needed to go deep on that one. I agree. I think it's a good episode, but I think it's good because, not just because we're good, but I think it's a topic. No, it's a topic that is just really top of mind for every marketer. And there are tools like 6 Sense that can really help you develop a single source of truth for your ICP so that it's not marketing's lists over here and sales lists over here. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah. And again, like talking about planning, going through a planning process, you're thinking about potential growth, you're thinking about next, where am I going to go? Like an ICP exercise, a TAM exercise, all those things are incredibly relevant to figuring out what's up for next year. And you say, like, oh, we're going to quadruple next year. Well, are you? Is there actually accounts out there to do that? We talk about that a lot. And I think that, again, it's really, really relevant for planning, like I said. So you should go.
And I think the one point I would hit that maybe is worth repeating is the ICP really should take into consideration not just your land, but the retention on the flip side. And so a lot of the work that we do at 6 Sense in our biweekly ICP meetings, which again, I mentioned is a little crazy that we meet that often about it, but it is taking into consideration which accounts not just are you winning, but are over year 1, year 2, year 3 actually being successful, expanding, and are being retained. And so we really don't want to be selling churn. And so incorporating the post-sale activity and retention numbers and expansion numbers is really crucial.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, I keep a broken record, but all part of planning. You absolutely need to understand, because you might just decide this is not a segment for us. So we have to go and make up for it someplace else. Or if we're going to grow, we literally need to go find, new ICP someplace else. And it could also feed back to your product team and say, okay, well, what do we need to actually break into this particular segment that we haven't been able to before? So it's so fundamental. And that was also a pretty good episode in terms of the number of acronyms, I think, that we had. It was ICP, TAM. Maybe that's only 2, but anyway, it was really good. So number 1 most listened to episode was about a transition to account-based marketing. So Casey Carey, at the time, was CMO of Quantum. He's actually moved on to a different role, but multi-time CMO who's gone through the massive change management strategic shift of a company of moving from leads and MQLs to an account-based model. This was like our 2nd or 3rd episode. I think we were still
early
figuring out what we were doing. This was my sick episode, but it really was so sort of like fundamental to what we wanted to do with the podcast, and so relevant to, obviously, this is a year ago now that we recorded this episode, probably a little longer. It's 6 Sense. We didn't have a podcast, and we're like, all right, we're going to talk about account-based marketing. And of course, it hits, and we get a decent listener. So I actually did, on my particular AI journey, I did get an AI summary of this one, because I did not have time to go back and listen to what I believe is probably about 30 hours of content, or 250,000 words, as I mentioned in the transcript. But we talked about just the overall the transition. We talked about ICP. That was literally kind of where we started. And also, like, what I thought Casey was talking about was the alignment between sales and marketing, and trying to negotiate that of, okay, like,
yes,
where are we going to focus? Where are the accounts? Because account selection should not be, hey, I was driving home and I saw this billboard. We should go after that. It needs to be data backed, which he had a really, really strong perspective on.
Again, yeah, if you go on LinkedIn, ABM is dead. But a lot of companies are making the shift from MQLs to an account-based world. Casey is a time 6 Cents customer. So it's a great validation of our platform and what it can do to make that journey successful. And then, of course, the program that you build around it, aligning with sales, developing the ICP, and just really measuring even. And he also spoke about getting the entire exec team and the organization on board, which is, again, we're selling change here. This is not an overnight, shift. And so it was really thoughtful and really well delivered. And I think he just hit on all the key points. And so I'm glad that's the top listened episode. And I think, because it's the top one, obviously the fact that it was one of the earliest plays into it, but there's been consistent listening.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because we didn't know what this was going to be, right? This is the part of our reflective episode we're going to talk about ourselves for a little bit, but we had no idea. And so we've been able to really grow an audience, and the feedback we get, this is the thing that's amazing to me too. I get messages on LinkedIn. We now have PR firms reaching out to us, asking for people to be on. And that's just everyone out there listening and sort of resharing in our little video clips and all that. And it's really great.
Thanksgiving is around the corner. I'm really thankful to the listeners for giving us a chance, for spending a little bit of time with us, listening to our rambling and my bad jokes, your good jokes, or just me laughing at your jokes. But it's been fun, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity and this little platform that we've built. And here's to the next 50.
Absolutely. And thanks for coming on with me, because I think it's probably September of last year. I said, hey, let's do this.
Let's do it.
Let's go for it. So I think the last thing I'll say is we don't have any sort of issue with guests and content and topics and all that. But for anyone who does listen a lot, I mean, definitely reach out to us and say hey, we want to hear about it. Because people reach out to us, say, oh, I saw this episode, it was great, or thanks for this information. But we want to know what you want to hear, right? Because that's always the best way to get guest topics. Let's crowdsource it. So please, LinkedIn, however, smoke signals, that might be harder, but you could try it and let us know.
Let us know. This is something we have a lot of fun doing, but we put it out there for our listeners. And so we would love to hear more from you. We've recorded this now, obviously, in our homes and also on a main stage in London.
That was very fun.
And also in a podcast booth on a trade show floor. So we'll see where the adventure takes us next, Adam. Thanks for being part of the ride.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Revenue Makers.
Do you have a revenue project you were asked to execute that had wild success? Share your story with us at 6cents.com/revenue, and we might just ask you to come on the show. And if you don't want to miss the next episode, be sure to follow along on your favorite podcast app.